The late 1800s, the advent of cinema, an artistic movement and industry that would fundamentally alter human culture and history, changing the way that we record and relate to the world around us. And there, just as narrative films took their first steps, was the horror genre. In the 1890s, as stage magicians, artists, inventors, and businessmen all converged to participate in the next big thing, horror reared its head. And why wouldn't it have? Horror has, after all, been a staple of human expression since time immemorial. Our fascination with subjects like death, violence, suffering, and the unknown coloring everything from our early creation myths to our modern podcasts. Among the many creators working to transplant storytelling to the silver screen stood the visionary French director Georges Méliès, whose bold experimentation and distinct style propelled filmmaking forward in the realms of art and technology. He helped to turn a fairground novelty into a full-blown industry, and along the way, dipped his toes often into the horror genre, most commonly horror comedy. And if the late 1800s were a time of laying the first bricks of film, then the 1900s were for solidifying the foundation, slowly diverging from the limitations of theater as people realized they had the power to craft stories and visuals once thought impossible. Though this was still a nascent period for horror, subtle changes had already begun to emerge, with clearer narratives taking shape and, in some cases, comedy being set aside to explore more somber, unsettling stories. Having fairly recently explored these early years of horror cinema, I've been struck by how much there already was to enjoy in these decades, and how old so many tropes and visuals now inherent to the genre truly are. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to take you on a quick journey through what I believe are the best horror films of the 1890s and 1900s. Number 9. The Doll's Revenge. Released in 1907, The Doll's Revenge is a British horror comedy directed by Llewellyn Fitzhammond and possibly Cecil M. Hepworth. Starring the acting siblings of Bertie and Gertie Potter, it is a bite-sized trick film, barely making it to 3 minutes, but notable for its absurdity, violence, and early usage of the scary doll trope. The film tells the story of a mean-spirited little boy who takes away his sister's new wind-up doll in order to tear it apart. To his great misfortune, the doll comes to life, grows, doubles, and rips him to pieces. This is an incredibly ridiculous short film, and I say that lovingly. Its dummy effect actually enhances the comedy with how blatantly fake it looks. At the same time, it's uniquely violent for an era when films shied away from even attempting gore, due in no small part to practical limitations as well as certain social sensibilities. As a result, it's definitely a fascinating and funny little early foray into what's essentially comedic shock horror. Number 8. The Treasures of Satan. Released in 1902, The Treasures of Satan is a French occult horror comedy written, directed, and edited by the aforementioned Georges Méliès. With Méliès being several years deep into his career at this point, this film is a good peek into how he was fine-tuning editing and special effects in order to craft elaborate illusions. The movie's premise is quite simple, a single idea on which to hang visual tricks and gags, which is more than sufficient for an early trick film. Basically, a thief breaks into a castle in order to steal treasure that belongs to the devil himself. Before he can make a break for it, he finds himself outnumbered and overrun by Satan's loyal demons. The Treasures of Satan bears the charm and wackiness that became intrinsic to Georges Méliès' signature style, with wonderful special effects and fast-paced slapstick that keep it alive for its entire runtime. Definitely a must-watch for fans of Méliès' work and people interested in very early special effects. Number 7. The Haunted Hotel. Released in 1907, The Haunted Hotel is an American ghost comedy film written and directed by J. Stewart Blackton and starring Paul Panzier and William V. Renos. This film is an unofficial remake of Georges Méliès's 1897 trick film, The Bewitched Inn, with a nearly identical plot but exponentially more advanced special effects, including some of the earliest surviving stop-motion animation. Mere months, or perhaps even weeks, after this film's debut, it was itself remade by Segundo de Chimone into the far less impressive film, The Bewitched House. In this film, a wary traveler arrives at a hotel for the night, only to find himself in the presence of a mischievous ghost, who serves his dinner, animates his clothes, and sends the entire room askew. The Haunted Hotel is very silly. In many ways, it embodies early horror cinema, which was almost always comedic. Trick films as a whole were not intended to actually scare audiences, just to make them laugh, enchant them with special effects, and at most, startle them. And enchant them it would have. I really can't stress enough how jaw-dropping and revolutionary this stop-motion animation would have been at the time. It is very much worth checking out if you are a fan of animation as well as general slapstick. Number 6. The Clockmaker's Secret. Released in 1907, The Clockmaker's Secret is an occult horror film written and directed by Gaston Vea, with cinematography by Segundo de Chimone. In an era of slapstick and tomfoolery, this film stands out for its uniquely dour tone. There aren't really any gags to lighten the mood, and any theatrical moments are more surreal than cheery. At the center of the story is a clockmaker, desperate to win his village's competition for designing the town square's new clock. Instead of relying on his own skill, though, he chooses to make a Faustian bargain with the devil for a clock that human hands could never make. Though he wins the competition, he succumbs to madness and guilt over his sold soul. In a time when trick films were primarily shown at magic shows, exhibition halls, and carnival fairgrounds, this film's tragic narrative and more downplayed performances make it stand out quite starkly from its contemporaries. Couple that with its solid special effects and pretty fantastic costumes, and you get a really great early gem for people into more serious horror. Number 5. The Haunted Castle. Released in 1896, The Haunted Castle is a French horror comedy film written, directed, and edited by Georges Méliès. It is also the first horror film ever made. What little story there is goes like this. Two cavaliers find a manor where they are harassed by demons, ghosts, and the devil. One flees, and the other fights back. Enjoying this film isn't really about enjoying a clear narrative. It's about appreciating film history and watching a movie realize the potential of its own medium. It's witnessing Georges Méliès experimenting as he never had before, and seeing a series of firsts being committed to film, including the first time a bat turns into a person. This movie built off of almost nothing, relying solely on what few films preceded it, coupled with Méliès' own imagination and experience as a stage illusionist. And all the while, it still manages some pretty fun, silly slapstick that, over a century later, still gets me. As a lover of horror, film history, and special effects, I have watched this trick film over a dozen times. There's just something kind of beautiful about seeing where it all began. Number 4. Legend of a Ghost. Released in 1908, Legend of a Ghost is a French dark fantasy film written and directed by Segundo de Chimone, starring his wife, the actress Julianne Mathieu. Where many of de Chimone's films were quite short and focused more on technical innovation over storytelling, this film stands out as a comprehensive narrative with some really fabulous special effects and a super charming lead female character. The story is, more or less, a series of fetch quests. A young woman encounters a ghost who beseeches her to help him with his resurrection. Despite being afraid, she ultimately agrees, going on a quest that takes her through hell and to the very bottom of the sea, all in search of enchanted items to help a stranger. This film is a wonderful early commitment of the dark fantasy genre to the screen, intertwining horror with some of the classic tropes of a noble quest narrative. And in a time when women were either entirely absent from the screen or relegated to the roles of damsels and love interests, it's really special to watch an autonomous female character embark on a dangerous adventure, facing down death and the devil, and even seemingly flirting with another woman. On top of that, the special effects, which include real automobiles disguised as chariots, make this a must watch for fans of dark fantasy and early special effects. Number 3, The Devil in a Convent. Released in 1899, The Devil in a Convent is a French occult comedy film written, directed, and edited by Georges Méliès, who also stars in it as the devil. On its surface, this film is about the devil appearing in a convent, where he wreaks havoc, tormenting residents and summoning the denizens of hell. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you will find a slapstick comedy making fun of the formality of the Catholic Church, an institution with which Méliès had grown increasingly jaded, due in no small part to the anti-Semitism fueled Dreyfus Affair. If you're interested in the context for that, I talk about it quite a bit in my full-length review of this film, but I digress. Equally fascinating as its historical context is watching this film after you've watched The Haunted Castle. It's astounding to see how rapidly Méliès improved over the course of a mere 3 years. This film is leaps and bounds ahead in terms of technical achievement, the sets, the effects, the costume, the big frog. Not to mention how infectious its cheery impishness is. Méliès is so lively and fun as the devil. A big recommend for everyone, but especially fans of slapstick comedy and religious satire. Number 2, Bluebeard. Released in 1901, Bluebeard is a French psychological horror film with some light fantasy elements, written, directed, and edited by Georges Méliès. It also stars Méliès as Bluebeard, as well as Jeanne Delsy as Bluebeard's bride. If you know the classic French folktale of Bluebeard, you know the plot of this film. A young woman is forced by her father to marry a wealthy but revolting nobleman, who is suspected of having killed his past 6 wives. When the nobleman must go on a trip, he tells his wife she's free to explore his entire castle, except for one specific locked room. Driven by curiosity, his wife soon comes to disobey him. Bluebeard stands out from much of Méliès's body of work and most films from this era due to its fairly grim tone and focus on human horror over the supernatural, tackling the subjects of misogyny, domestic abuse, and femicide. That isn't to say it's devoid of any spectacle or wonder. There's plenty to be found in the film's sets, costumes, props, and editing. It's just heavier feeling, more realistic and grounded, with less fantastical airs than much of Méliès's films. It's a great early foray for fans of psychological horror, as well as classic folktales. And now for a few honorable mentions. The Bewitched Inn, an 1897 French horror comedy about a traveler experiencing supernatural hijinks in an inn. Summoning the Spirits, an 1899 French special effects display short. The Apparition, or Mr. Jones's comical experience with a ghost, a 1903 French ghost comedy about a traveler who's punished for his lechery by a female ghost. And finally, The Witch, a 1906 French dark fantasy children's film about a troubadour saving a princess. Number 1, The Merry Frolics of Satan. Released in 1906, The Merry Frolics of Satan is a French dark fantasy horror comedy written, directed, and edited by Georges Méliès, who also plays the devil. In a time when most horror movies were shot using a small handful of actors on 1 or 2 sets and rarely surpassed 10 minutes in length, this film was epic. Over 15 minutes long, it features staggeringly complex special effects, over a dozen sets, real locations, and animals, and, for the time, an enormous cast. The film tells the tale of an inventor who signs a contract with a famous alchemist in exchange for the ability to magically travel the world. Unbeknownst to him, the alchemist is actually Satan, and he has signed away his soul. Accompanied by his loyal assistant and his family, the inventor embarks on what will become a deeply ill-fated trip. I cannot praise this film enough. It's not just that it was ahead of its time. Even now, it's a fantastical, engrossing movie that really feels like it's taking you on a physical adventure. You can sense the love and effort that were put into its creation, from the sets and costumes to the stunts and experimental background movement. I could watch the celestial ride scene alone on a loop. This film is 120 years old, yet it hasn't lost an ounce of its magic. I recommend it to anyone and everyone. Please, please check this film out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be very appreciated. You can find my other reviews on this channel, starting all the way back with my review of the first horror film ever made in 1896. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and Instagram at Under the Fleapit. If you like what I do and want to support the channel, my Ko-fi donation page and Patreon will both be linked in the description of this video. Until next time, this has been Under the Fleapit. Stay spooky!